When I landed back in town after 3 grueling weeks overseas, all I wanted was to see my family's faces again. I'd closed a deal worth over $2 million, but in my mind, the real prize was coming home. I opened our family group chat, typed with a smile, "Back from my business trip. Anyone home?" and hit send. I imagined Michael's reply would be instant. Instead, 10 long minutes later, my phone buzzed. "We're busy. Maybe another time." That was it. No welcome back? No. How was the trip? Nothing. I stared at the screen, the warmth in my chest turning to a cold, sinking weight. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type. If you've ever tried to fix a broken relationship, you know the silence can cut deeper than words. What Michael didn't know was that I wasn't just back from a trip. I was back for good. No more missed birthdays, no more empty seats at school recitals. But his reply felt like a door slamming in my face. And then, a second buzz, this one from my daughter, privately. "He doesn't want you to come." She didn't say why. She didn't have to. My chest tightened as I realized there was something I hadn't been told. Maybe something that had been hidden from me for years. I had no idea that by the time I found out the truth, I would be standing on Michael's porch, staring at the face of a baby girl who looked exactly like my late wife, and realizing she didn't even know I existed. The cab ride from the airport was quiet, except for the soft hum of tires on wet asphalt. The late spring rain had left the streets shining, reflecting neon signs and streetlights in blurred streaks. My suitcase sat beside me, scuffed and heavy, with the weight of 3 weeks' worth of business clothes and maybe a little hope. 3 weeks away felt like 3 months. I'd spent the last half year chasing deals in Singapore, Tokyo, and Dubai. Each trip another stamp in my passport, but another empty seat at the family table. This time, though, I told myself, things would be different. The deal I'd just closed meant I could ease back, take fewer trips, be around more. That thought kept me going through the endless flights and late-night meetings. When the cab pulled into my driveway, the porch light was off. It was just past 7 p.m. Dinner time. I pictured Michael's kids in their high chairs, my daughter Emily pouring glasses of milk, my son-in-law complaining about the weather. I smiled at the thought, opened my phone, and tapped into our family group chat. My fingers typed before I even thought about it. "Back from my business trip. Anyone home?" I hit send, imagining a flood of replies. I set my phone on the armrest, paid the driver, and stepped out into the damp air. The scent of wet pavement and cut grass drifted up, familiar and grounding. I wheeled my suitcase to the front door, expecting my phone to buzz any second. It didn't. I unlocked the door, stepped into the darkened hallway, and pulled my phone from my pocket. 10 minutes had passed. Then finally, a buzz. Michael's name lit up the screen. I opened the message, expecting at least "Welcome back, Dad." What I read instead was short, flat, and cold. "We're busy. Maybe another time." I stared at the words, my thumb resting on the glass. My chest felt hollow. Maybe another time. That was it. No, "How was your trip?" No, "Good to hear from you." Just a polite but unmistakable dismissal. I told myself he was probably in the middle of something. Maybe putting the baby to bed. But even as I tried to rationalize it, the tone of his words stuck under my skin like a splinter. I typed, "I can swing by later if that's easier." My thumb hovered over send, but before I could tap, another notification appeared. Not in the group chat, but a private message from Emily. He doesn't want you to come. The words hit harder than Michael's. My throat tightened. I typed back, "Why not?" and stared at the little gray typing bubble that never appeared. The silence from Emily was almost worse than Michael's brusque reply. I sank into the couch, the room around me too still, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen sounding unnaturally loud. I scrolled back through our family chat history, weeks of brief exchanges, photos of the kids, most of them sent by Emily, some by my daughter-in-law, but almost none by Michael himself. The last real conversation he and I had in there was from Christmas, 7 months ago. In that thread, I'd invited everyone over for dinner, promised to cook the roast myself. Michael had said they couldn't make it because the baby was sick. I'd replied with, "Hope she feels better soon," and never heard back. I closed my eyes, leaned my head back, and let the rain tapping against the window fill the silence. I tried to remember the last time Michael and I had laughed together. It must have been years ago. Maybe when we were fixing that old fishing boat in the garage. He was 16 then, his hands covered in grease, his eyes lighting up when the motor finally roared to life. I wondered when that light had gone out. Was it gradual, like a dimmer switch sliding down year after year, or did it happen all at once, the day I missed something important? The phone buzzed again. My heart jumped. But it was just an airline survey from my flight. I tossed the phone on the couch cushion beside me and rubbed my temples. Emily's message replayed in my head. He doesn't want you to come. The phrasing was deliberate. Not can't, not too busy, but doesn't want. There was a difference, and it was one I couldn't ignore. I thought about calling Michael, hearing his voice, but the idea of another cold, clipped reply stopped me. Instead, I sat there in the half-dark, feeling the weight of something I couldn't name pressing down on me. Something had shifted in our family while I'd been away, and whatever it was, I had the uneasy sense it had nothing to do with business trips, and everything to do with me. I lay awake that night, the room dim, except for the faint glow of the streetlight seeping through the blinds. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a damp chill that settled into my bones. Sleep didn't come. Instead, my mind wandered back to the day everything between Michael and me began to fracture for real. It was 8 years ago. I was in Singapore, finalizing a contract I'd been chasing for months. The stakes were high. If I landed the deal, the company would survive another year. If I didn't, we'd be cutting jobs, maybe even selling the house. I remember sitting in the hotel lobby, phone pressed to my ear, voice hoarse from endless calls, when Emily's number lit up my screen. I answered quickly, but it wasn't Emily's voice I heard. It was Michael. He was 19, his tone flat but trembling. "Dad, it's Mom. She's not doing well." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What happened?" I asked, already signaling to the receptionist for an earlier flight. "She collapsed this morning. We're at the hospital." I told him I'd be on the first plane home. He didn't respond, just hung up. I tried. God knows I tried. But the only flight out was the next morning, and by the time I landed in Boston, she was gone. Michael was standing in the hallway outside her room, shoulders stiff, eyes red and hollow. I reached out to him, but he stepped back. "You weren't here," he said quietly. That was the moment the light in his eyes dimmed, the moment he stopped calling me Dad. With with warmth in his voice. I told myself he'd heal with time, that we'd find our way back. But years passed, and the space between us only widened. The next morning, as I sat with a mug of coffee gone cold, my phone rang. The name on the screen startled me. Claire Thompson. She'd been one of Linda's closest friends, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "John," she said, her voice warm, but carrying an undercurrent of caution. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "Not at all. It's good to hear your voice, Claire. How have you been?" We traded a few polite updates, but then her tone shifted. "I ran into Michael the other day, at the park." "Oh?" I tried to keep my voice steady. He's grown into such a responsible man. You'd be proud." She hesitated, then added, "He told me he's been there for Emily and the family in ways you used to be. Birthdays, school events, everything. Said he didn't want the kids to feel alone." Something in my chest tightened. "The kids?" I repeated, confused. Claire paused, as if realizing she'd said too much. You didn't know?" "Know what?" My voice sharpened. "John, Michael has a daughter. She's 6 months old. Beautiful little thing." I gripped the edge of the table. "A daughter? And no one told me?" "I assumed you knew. He and Sarah." She stopped herself again, clearly regretting the call now. "I should go. I didn't mean to stir anything." But the damage was done. The idea that my own granddaughter was out there, alive, growing, and I'd never held her, never even seen her. It was like a fresh wound on top of an old one. I hung up and sat in silence, the ticking of the kitchen clock suddenly unbearable. Images filled my mind, a baby's tiny fingers gripping mine, her eyes searching my face for recognition she wouldn't find. My granddaughter, 6 months old, and I was a stranger to her. I tried to imagine Michael's reasoning. Was this some kind of punishment? A way to keep me out, to remind me of every missed moment, every absence? Or was it something deeper? A belief that I didn't deserve to be part of her life at all. The idea of showing up unannounced crossed my mind more than once that day. But even if I did, what then? Would he slam the door? Would I catch a glimpse of her before he pulled her away? I poured the cold coffee down the sink and stared at the empty mug. The truth was, Claire's call hadn't just given me news. It had given me a choice. I could keep my distance, accept the role Michael had written for me, or I could fight to rewrite it. Somewhere between that choice and the ache in my chest, I decided I couldn't let this stand. I didn't know how, but I was going to see my granddaughter. And whether Michael liked it or not, I was going to find out why he'd kept her from me. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text. By late afternoon, I was in my car, the address typed into the GPS, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The streets blurred past, but my mind was fixed on one thing. I was going to see my granddaughter today. No more waiting. No more sidelong information from old friends. Michael's neighborhood was quiet, a row of modest homes with well-kept lawns. His driveway was empty, but lights glowed in the front windows. I parked at the curb, took a breath, and walked up the short path to the door. The cold air bit at my face, but my chest was hot with nerves. I knocked. The sound seemed louder than I intended. After a moment, footsteps approached. Then the door opened a crack. Michael stood there, his expression flat, his body angled as though shielding something behind him. "Dad," he said, without warmth. "Michael." I forced a smile. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd... You shouldn't have come. His voice was calm but edged, like a knife that had been sharpened too many times. I just wanted to see you, and maybe meet your daughter. His eyes hardened. He opened the door just enough for me to see his stance. One arm braced against the frame, the other holding the edge of the door, like a barrier. You were never there for me when I needed you, he said. Don't think you can just walk into her life now. I felt the words like a punch. Michael, I know I made mistakes. I wasn't here as much as I should have been. But I'm still your father. And I'm her grandfather. That's where you're wrong, he said, his voice low. Being a father is more than a title. You gave that up a long time ago. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes, hurt, maybe, or regret, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm here because I love you, because I want to know her. Love? He let out a bitter laugh. Where was that love when Mom was in the hospital? When I called and begged you to come home? When I had to sign the papers alone? I opened my mouth to answer, to explain, but the words felt too small to bridge the years between us. I think you should go, he said finally. And before I could say more, he began to close the door. I stepped back, the space between us filled with the unspoken. The door clicked shut. I turned toward the street, my shoes crunching on the gravel path. The air felt heavier than when I'd arrived, pressing on my chest with every step. And then I saw it. A flicker of movement in the front window caught my eye. I glanced up and froze. A small face peeked out from behind the curtain, round cheeks, soft curls framing her forehead. She couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Our eyes met. Her gaze was wide, curious, unafraid. And in that gaze, I saw something that made my breath catch. The same deep brown eyes Linda had, the same gentle tilt, the same way they seemed to hold more than they should. My throat tightened. I lifted a hand, almost without thinking, and gave the smallest wave. She tilted her head as if studying me. And for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of us. Then the curtain shifted, and she was gone. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the now empty window, the image of her face burning in my mind. My granddaughter, my blood. And I was a stranger to her. Walking back to my car, I tried to tell myself I should be grateful just to have seen her at all. But gratitude wasn't what I felt. It was something sharper, heavier, the weight of every year lost, every moment I hadn't been there to hold her father when he needed me, and now, every moment, I wouldn't get to hold her. I started the engine, the low rumble filling the silence. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught one last glimpse of the house in the rearview mirror. The curtain at the window swayed gently, like a whisper I couldn't hear. That night, after leaving Michael's house, I couldn't shake the image of my granddaughter's eyes. They followed me home, into my living room, into the quiet shadows of my kitchen. Sleep wouldn't come, so I found myself pulling an old cardboard box from the back of my closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. It was Linda's box. Letters, photographs, little scraps of our life together. Her handwriting on old birthday cards, faded Polaroids of the kids, and a pressed flower from our first anniversary. I sifted through them slowly, careful with the paper as if it might crumble at my touch. Near the bottom, wrapped in a yellowing envelope, was a folded piece of stationery I didn't recognize. My heart kicked harder when I saw the name at the top, in Linda's neat, deliberate script. Michael. I sat down at the kitchen table, the envelope trembling slightly in my hands. It had never been sealed, never sent. I unfolded it and began to read. Michael, my sweet boy, it began. If you are reading this, I want you to know something important. Your father loves you. He has always loved you. The day I got sick, he was in Singapore not for himself, but for us. He was fighting to keep our home, to make sure you and Emily had a future. It wasn't an easy choice, and it broke his heart to be away from me. Please, if you can, forgive him for not being here. It was the hardest thing he's ever done. The words blurred as my eyes stung. I read it again and again, hearing her voice in every line. That trip had been brutal. 48 hours without sleep, my mind torn between the boardroom and a hospital bed thousands of miles away. I'd told no one about the full stakes of that contract, not even Michael, thinking it didn't matter. But Linda had known. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the letter, and sent it to Michael with a short message. I thought you should see this. Mom wrote it for you. The minutes stretched. I stared at the screen, waiting for the 3 little dots to appear. Finally, they did. I know about the letter, he wrote. I found it years ago. I frowned. My thumbs moved before my mind caught up. Then why? Why have you hated me all this time? The reply came faster than I expected. Because that's not the whole story. I could forgive the business trip. But the real reason you weren't there? That's different. A chill slid down my spine. What do you mean? He didn't answer right away. I could picture him, phone in hand, deciding whether to push the knife in deeper. When the next message finally came, it was worse than silence. Ask yourself why Mom didn't call you directly that day. Ask yourself who you were with before you got on that plane. I stared at the words, my pulse pounding in my ears. He was wrong. He had to be. But the accusation was there, veiled yet sharp. My mind reeled back to that week in Singapore, combing through every detail, the meetings, the late-night dinners with the clients, my assistant Daniel hovering nearby, running interference. I remembered Linda's voice in our last call, strained, tired. She'd said she was fine, that it was nothing urgent, and I'd believed her. But why hadn't she called me again when she collapsed? Why had Michael been the one to reach out instead? I typed, Michael, I don't know what you think you know, but I was never with anyone else. I was working to save the company. That's the truth. His reply came minutes later. We'll see if you still call it the truth when you hear the rest. And then nothing. I set the phone down, the letter still open on the table. Linda's words told one story. Michael's hinted at another darker version. One that suggested I'd failed them in more ways than just absence. I felt as though I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into something I couldn't yet see. Whatever the truth was, Michael was holding it just out of reach. And until I knew there would be no moving forward, the next day, my phone buzzed just as I was making coffee. Michael's name lit the screen. I hesitated before answering, bracing for the ice in his voice. I'll tell you, he said, without greeting, but only once. And after that, you leave us alone if you still don't understand. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm listening. The night Mom collapsed, he began. I called you. You didn't answer, so I texted. I told you she couldn't breathe, that I didn't think she'd make it to morning. I begged you to come home. You never replied. Not then. Not ever. For a moment, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Michael, I swear to you, I never got that message. You think I'm lying? His voice cracked, but the anger was still there. I stared at my phone all night, waiting for a call back. The only thing that came was a message from Emily saying your flight was the next day. I'm not saying you're lying, I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. I'm saying something's wrong, because if I'd seen that text, I would have been on the first plane out, contract or not. Does it matter? He snapped. You weren't there. The call ended before I could respond. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the phone in my hand. His words churned in my head. If the message had been sent, why didn't I get it? By mid-morning, I was in my study, digging through an old drawer until I found the battered black iPhone I'd used 8 years ago. It was dead, but after an hour of searching, I located the charger. The screen lit up slowly, its outdated icons like relics from another lifetime. I scrolled through the messages. Nothing from Michael on that day, just the usual thread ending a week before. My stomach twisted. I opened the backups, combing through the data, and there it was, a gap, a missing block of messages for that exact day and time. The realization hit me hard and sudden. Only one other person had access to my phone back then. Daniel. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but it took me just a few minutes to find his number in an old email archive. I called, and to my surprise, he answered. John, he said cautiously, it's been a long time. It has, I replied. I need to ask you something. 8 years ago in Singapore, did you delete a message from my son? There was a pause, long enough for my pulse to quicken. Then he sighed. You remember what was at stake with that deal? If you'd left, the board would have killed it. The company would have gone under. Daniel, I said, my voice low, did you delete the message? Yes. The word was barely audible. It came in when you were in the middle of negotiations. I saw the panic on your face when you answered his call earlier, and I thought, if you read that, you'd be on the first plane home, and everything we worked for would be gone. I told myself I was protecting you, the company, everyone's jobs. I closed my eyes. You weren't protecting me. You were taking away my choice. I know, he admitted. I've regretted it ever since. But what's done is done. I ended the call without another word. For a long while, I just sat there, the silence pressing in on me. The truth was out, but it didn't make the reality any easier. Michael had spent nearly a decade believing I ignored his plea for help, and I had lived nearly a decade believing there had been no plea at all. That afternoon, I drove back to Michael's neighborhood. I didn't call ahead. He answered the door with the same guarded look as before. I know why I didn't get your message, I said. It wasn't me, Michael. My assistant deleted it. He thought he was saving the company. He thought he was saving me. But all he did was destroy us. Michael's eyes searched mine. The anger still there, but tempered by something else. Confusion. Maybe even the first edge of doubt. He admitted it. I continued. Said he saw your text and erased it before I could read it. I didn't know until today. Michael leaned against the doorframe, staring at the ground. His jaw tightened. All these years, I thought you chose them over us. Over Mom. I would never have made that choice, I said, my voice cracking despite myself. I would have been on the next plane. You have to believe that. He didn't answer right away. The silence stretched, and for a moment, I thought he might shut the door again. Then he looked up, his eyes wet but steady. "I don't know what to do with that," he said quietly. "It doesn't bring her back. It doesn't erase the years we lost." "No," I agreed. "But maybe it means the years ahead don't have to be the same." For the first time in years, he didn't push me away. He didn't invite me in either, but he didn't close the door. And for now, that was enough. It had been 3 weeks since the day I told Michael the truth about the deleted message. 3 weeks of silence, no texts, no calls. I tried to be patient, to let the weight of my words settle. But each day that passed, I wondered if the truth had been enough, or if the damage was too deep to ever repair. Then, on a quiet Thursday evening, my phone buzzed. It was Michael. My pulse quickened as I opened the message. "If you're free, come for dinner tomorrow. We want you to meet someone." I read it 3 times, my breath catching each time. He didn't say her name, but I knew. The next day, I drove to his house with my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than they had in years. The winter air was sharp, but the sky was clear, pale blue fading into gold at the horizon. When I pulled into his driveway, I could see movement in the front window. The door opened before I could knock. Michael stood there, a little stiff but not hostile. "Come in," he said simply. The warmth of the house wrapped around me, carrying the scent of roasted chicken and fresh bread. And then I saw her. She was standing near the couch, chubby hands clutching the edge of a coffee table for balance. Soft brown curls framed her face, and those same deep brown eyes, Linda's eyes, locked on me. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then she let go of the table, toddled toward me with surprising determination, and called out, "Grandpa." The sound shattered something in me. I bent down, arms out, and she walked straight into them. I lifted her up, feeling the small weight of her body, the warmth of her cheek against mine. My eyes burned, and I didn't bother to hide it. We sat down together in the living room. She babbled happily, showing me a small stuffed rabbit, while Michael watched from the kitchen doorway. I glanced up at him, and for the first time in years, he didn't look away. Dinner was almost normal. We talked about safe topics: Emily's new job, the weather, a recipe Michael had tried last week. The tension was still there, but it wasn't the choking kind anymore. Halfway through the meal, Michael set down his fork and looked at me. "I'm not ready to forgive everything," he said, his tone measured. "But I think we can start over. For her." He glanced at his daughter, who was giggling as she fed a piece of bread to a rabbit. I nodded. "That's all I want, a start." The rest of the evening passed in a haze of small moments. Her laughter when I made a face, the way she leaned against me during dessert, the warmth of Michael's voice when he told her it was bedtime. When it was time to leave, I hugged her one last time, memorizing the weight of her in my arms. Michael walked me to the door. We exchanged a quiet good night, and though it wasn't much, it was more than I'd had in years. As I stepped off the porch, a thought tugged at me, a faint but stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind us. Inside, after the door closed, Michael picked up his phone from the counter. On the family group chat, my very first message from weeks ago, back from my business trip. "Anyone home?" Still sat near the top. Just below it, unsent, was a draft he had typed that day, but never sent. "I've missed you too, Dad." He stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. Then he locked the phone and set it down. Not tonight, but soon.